We are Group 4, and our topic is the origins of social work, years 1600 through the 1800s, on the philosophical views on children. The English Poor Law of 1606 is considered the first legislation to establish public support for the poor through taxes, and the first to create categories by which eligibility was determined. The policy regarding children of the poor was the most controversial. It called for the removal of children from their families to relieve them of the burden. It was determined that binding out children would not only reduce the hardship of their families, it would also decrease the amount of financial support paid to each poor family. And it would redistribute the burden of the cost of the children to more prosperous households. Needy families were expected to hand over their children to become indentured as apprentices, and the citizens with means were expected to take them in. The children went to the people who bid the lowest for reimbursement of their care. The parents were opposed to this policy. One reason was that they relied on their young children to do many of the daily tasks needed to run the household while they performed other work to support the family. Interestingly, poor parents were not legally bound to comply with the apprenticeship of their children, but any parent that refused to have their children indentured would be denied all support and sent into the House of Correction. The employers did not want the proper children because the poor were associated with filth, menace, and disobedience. The employers also felt that they were being forced to pay taxes as well as support the pauper children, which placed an unfair financial burden on them. When the mandate was disputed, the courts remained firm and justified the policy by saying it was the best interests of the children whose parents were not able to raise them better, and it was a moral obligation to enforce this policy to protect taxpayers from the unnecessary increase of welfare costs. Today, the goal of child welfare agencies is to provide the services needed to help children and families together. Social Darwinism and the Freudian theory were two big concepts in the realm of psychology, but made a big impact on the field of social work. In this slide, I will be connecting Herbert Spencer and Sigmund Freud's views, which took place in the 1800s to early 1900s. Herbert Spencer was a strong advocate of the liberal views in society, though, as a Darwinist, he leaned more toward the conservative side. Herbert viewed society as a whole as an organism, and this organism grew steadily, and those most fit would survive that period of growth. Those not fit in the eyes of a conservative Darwinist viewed individuals as less, and they were thought to be poor or associated with poverty standards. In connection with Herbert Spencer's views, Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, has tremendously impacted social work programs. Psychoanalysis strives to support people and has helped with programs such as overprotection programs, child guidance programs, and even is incorporated into casework. All are programs that focus on the betterment of children and adolescents that are currently in poverty or poor standards. Though the idea of poverty has broadened, we have no set markers and many different variables that explain why poverty is a social issue. The connection between social work and Freud's views has a large impact on the practice of social work. Social Darwinism has greatly influenced our shifting views of poverty, including changing viewpoints about the responsibility of poverty. As a result, the social work profession has started to take action and confront poverty while remembering its roots. Tabula rasa is a Latin term that means blank slate. The idea that the mind is a blank state at birth dates back to at least Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas. Locke's concept of tabula rasa and the concept that most associates with the phrase in philosophy and psychology was introduced in an essay concerning human understanding written in 1691. Locke wrote this series of essays as a counter-argument to the then popular idea of innatism, or the idea that individuals are born with certain innate knowledge, such as morality. Locke's concept of tabula rasa proposed that mental differences between people are largely due to the differences in social environment, not innate qualities. He also made a distinction between observation and reasoning, which he believed together comprised understanding. He wrote, "To inquire whether the souls of a newborn are just tabula rasas, afterwards to be fulfilled by observation and reasoning, or whether they have laws of nature as signs of their duty inscribed of them at birth." This concept led Locke to believe that society could produce self-directed individuals who will follow a reason in practical life instead of being easily influenced by culture, as long as the government maintains civil order by fostering conditions that are conducive to educating individuals in truth and steer them away from propaganda. Locke had concerns that many modern readers would be able to empathize with. He had anxiety regarding growing private profits to determinant of public welfare. The legacy of his philosophy is the nature versus nurture debate that is fueled in developmental psychology for many years. The future of education must 1. Identify and understand with interplay between genes and environment. 2. Assess not only the child but their environment. And 3. Individualize curriculum to fit the needs of the child and their environment. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, a French philosopher and the philosophical mind that engineered the theory of social contracts, wrote what he regarded to be his best and most important work, Emile, in 1762. Emile is a philosophical meditation and half-novel about the relationship between the individual and society, which studies children and childhood. In Emile, Rousseau expands his view that children in childhood embody the highest expression of what it means to be human. For Rousseau, society is corrupt, man-made, and without divine order. It makes children, who are inherently good, evil adults. In contrast, Rousseau theorizes that nature and children, created by God's divine order, are good. Children, he argues, point to the origins of humanity and remind adults about a paradise lost that can be regained. In Rousseau's pastoral utopia of nature, children form a harmonious relationship with nature and exist in a fertile developmental environment. Rousseau emphasizes that children should be pruned to grow in the direction of their natural inclinations. He also thinks they should exercise their freedom to discover and express their natural inclinations, which are good, without the interference of systemized rules, habits, instruction, or societal expectations. Rousseau's ideas later influenced the English romantics and philosopher Immanuel Kant. Some of his influences also showed up in children's literary works like The Secret Garden, Tarzan, and The Jungle Book. Rousseau's positions weren't without criticism, however. Mary Wollstonecraft, for instance, criticized Rousseau's sexist views about the education of girl children and the role of women as solely a marriageable complement to men in the state of nature. Rousseau's ideas initially found more resonance in American than French, and the reach of his influence throughout the history of social work beginning in 1880 continues. Today, social workers continue to provide services across the board that resonate with Rousseau's ideas. Possible reform should include behavioral and mental health interventions that focus on assessing and making changes to children's environment at school and at home, that also incorporate the family as part of therapeutic methodologies. This is similar to multi-systemic therapy, but might take place before a child is removed from the home and identified risks for out-of-home placement are clear. Current reforms in social work will likely continue to broaden the spirit of Rousseau's work, originally envisioned as a pathway for European male children. Social workers may advocate for policies and support interventions that reflect and increase understanding about diverse clients and families in order to improve environments where children grow in 5 areas: family-centered services, cultural awareness, competency based training, education, and child well being.